Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. Ours is a place where dreams take flight, voices are heard, and stories are shared. This is where cultures meet, connections are formed, and ideas are transformed into action. This is your destination for authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations. We're where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover our world of education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our USA Global TV channel and download our USA Global TV app. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. With heartfelt thanks to our executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, music scored by Yifei Tang from Cloud Road Music, creative direction by Paul Garcia, and I'm Al Cini, and I'm very proud to be part of the USA Global TV and Radio family. So join us here at USA Global TV and Radio. Make us your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication, or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited. Thank you for being a part of our global community. Let's inspire together.
You have an idea. You're really passionate about it. You decide you're going to go into business. You do your research, you see who the competitors are, you come out with a 5-year plan, you put it into place, you make sacrifices, you invest your money and your time, you miss out on the social gatherings, some of the things that your children are going through, some of their games and sporting events. You bypass all of it because you can't wait to achieve success. And then you get there, and it might not be exactly what you thought it was going to be. Let's have a conversation about this with my dear friend, mentor, and colleague, Mr. Al Cini. He's the co-founder of ProIT for Teams. Let's welcome him to the program. Hello, sir. How are you?
I am just fine today, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Thank you very much for inviting me to join you. And, that whole idea of winning is an interesting topic. And there are a couple of ways to carry this conversation. And I'm looking forward to heading down all those paths with you today.
Well, you and I both are business owners. We are both TV show hosts. We are global broadcasters and so much more. We are individuals, humans, and we have both separately and together achieved a certain level of success. And that doesn't mean that we've checked all the boxes. That doesn't mean that we always sleep well. That doesn't mean that everything is in la la land. So Al, what was success looking like to you while you were trying to achieve it? Give us an example of some aspect in your life when you were going after success, and what did that look like?
It's funny you'd ask the question that way. When you're younger, I don't want to talk about how old I am because that's depressing, but when you're younger, winning is pretty much defined by society. We kind of live in a society that celebrates a victory by defining a loss as a humiliating moment for somebody else. And which means for us, especially when we're younger, it's about winning like on a battlefield or winning like on a field of play in sports. We're not so much looking to accomplish something as we're looking to take all the people who we might have beaten along the way and kind of rub their noses in it, if you know what I mean. And that is an extremely toxic point of view to have that actually limits your ability to succeed over the long haul. It always feels great in the short run. So in the immediate moment, it feels good to be victorious, especially when it's over somebody else that you may not like. And the reason why you don't like them is because they're competing with you. It feels good in the short run to kind of humiliate those people, but in the long run, it really doesn't pay off. And there are plenty of moments in history where that's borne out. And not just in your personal history, but also in the history of the world. And I want to talk about all of that because winning tastes sweet, but it's not necessarily very nourishing. When it's competitive winning, it really often could turn out to be long-term losing. And I think you need to be mindful of that. You need to look for opportunities where everybody wins. Now, I know that's kind of a platitude, and I'm not a fan of platitudes. In fact, I kind of hate them. But looking for the win-win, looking for a way for everybody to come out of this feeling like they won, instead of just you feeling like that and everybody else feeling like they lost, is a deceptively foolish way to approach your life and to approach your business. That being kind of my point.
Al, what I'm hearing you say is the art of negotiation. When we walk away from an engagement, do you feel good about it? Does the other person feel good about it? Are you both saying, yes, this was a win? And I think that we can have that duality within ourselves when we are looking to accomplish something. And I'll give an example. When I graduated with my doctorate, which, believe me, it was 2011. It's like, what? I can't believe it was so long ago, 15 years ago. That was one of the greatest moments of my life. Just like the beginning of the show, I planned for it, invested money and time. I gave up so many things. And then when I went to the place where I was working, and I was now Dr. Kerbeck, I was told, we're not going to call you Dr. Kerbeck because you're either an academic or you're a salesperson. And so my role was salesperson. And it just kind of ripped my heart out to think that I worked so hard at that. So I had to look at what was success. Was it this external lack of validation, or was it what I had inside me? Was there a negotiation that I was going to make that was going to be a win-win for them and for me? No, probably not. It was basically get back to selling. We don't win more of that.
I'm kind of happy you brought us down that road. It's a great, I think on that basis, it's a great conversation to have. At some point in your life, the things that you've earned and achieved become important, and you kind of expect recognition for it, like to be called doctor, or or all those acronyms people like to put at the end of their names that tell everybody what school they went to, or, what certifications they've earned, that kind of thing. But at what point does expressing that sense of victory actually discourage people cooperating with you or working with you? And what is it you really need in your life? And what you need in your life are not a littered battlefield of vanquished enemies over whom you walk proudly. I remember in the movie Conan the Barbarian, nothing feels better than to drive your enemy in chains ahead of your chariot while their women lament on the side of the road. That feeling that somehow I've conquered everybody is a feeling I think that an awful lot of people kind of yearn for, and they feel great when they experience it. Everybody gets a chance at experiencing it at some point in their lives. But every time you beat somebody, whatever you want to call beat, every time you assert yourself as superior to someone else by whatever measurement that it might apply, what you're really doing is diminishing their willingness to cooperate with you in the future. You're losing them as a potential friend. I mean, Abraham Lincoln has a famous quote, do I not defeat my enemy when I make them my friend? And that whole idea that somehow you can, and the reason why it sort of popped up in my head this morning, we kind of had a moment where we needed to pivot because our regularly scheduled guest for health reasons wasn't able to attend. So I started thinking, okay, what are we going to talk about instead? And this is a head for business, and it's about psychology. And the deceptive aspect of psychology is that somehow if I win something and defeat other people, I'm actually really winning, and you actually often aren't. And if we go through history, let's say at the end of World War I, where the Allies who won that war drove Germany into submission by depriving them of their wealth and making it impossible for them to live, we actually caused World War II by the poor treatment we offered to the people that we beat in World War I. And so but it felt great. And if you want to get votes, you want to be able to say we drove the enemy into unconditional surrender, and that means we won and they lost. But if what you want is really some kind of a lasting structure of mutual support, where people focus more on positive things through the future and less on negative things, then you really have to accept the possibility that you're going to be compromising. And that really, it's so important, especially in business, because especially new managers, but even some really bad old ones, feel like the way you manage other people is by asserting your dominance over them, especially if you used to do back in the day what they do for a living now. So you'll always be reminding them that you feel like you were the best employee that your company ever had, even though now they're your employees. And rather than giving them the grace and the opportunity to declare a win every now and then, you'll find yourself feeling like you need to compete with them. I wouldn't have done it that way. I would have done it this way and it would have been better. Those little things that we do to people actually lose them as allies. And it's amazing to me how often I see that mistake being made over and over again. And that one of the reasons why I wanted to address this topic is because we now have in world politics this conflict with Iran in the United States that has resulted in a memorandum of understanding that a lot of people are criticizing because they feel as though it gives Iran too much. And I understand that. We're not a political show, and this is not about politics. This is about psychology. If what you ultimately want to do is work things out with somebody who's just come really, objectively speaking, out on the short end of things for a whole bunch of reasons, if what you want to do, you're not is build some kind of a collaborative relationship with them, you're not going to get there by embarrassing them and by humiliating them. You just won't. So everybody in every conflict, in order to be able to move forward in a positive way, has to be able to come out of that conflict with their flag up. Now, that means I had a friend of mine who worked in HR at a very, very competitive, NASDAQ. Good friend of mine. And as you could imagine, NASDAQ, a stock exchange, is a very competitive environment where people tend to assert dominance over each other pretty much all the time, mostly for the fun of it. That was it. And his point as a director of HR in that environment is that sometimes you get the best results from somebody by allowing them the grace to feel like they've come out on top, even though in fact they've just been corrected in some way. It can't feel like a loss to them because you lose people who feel like they've lost. If you want to keep people, you got to make sure that they don't feel like they've lost. They have to feel like they've learned or even won, which means they have to come out in charge of their own lives and not subservient to you where you're telling them what they need to do next. I don't know. Dr. Jacalyn, what do you think about that?
I agree with you, Al. I think I was thinking myself about the title of the program and also about the U.S. negotiations with Iran, and people get so politically charged. But I think if we break it down into something very simple that people can relate to, if you think about your own relationship with someone in your life, a family member, a spouse, a child, and if you were to go to them because you're not happy about how things are going, and you just say, listen, in order for me to stay with you, I need this. I don't like this about you. You need to change this about you. And you have until tomorrow. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. It's not actually happening.
That I think that's a perfect way to put it. So they're framing an argument that you can't possibly win. Right. Really,
and you don't want to win.
Saying, I'm not happy with you, but I could be happy with you if you just be somebody else.
That's right.
And the somebody else that I want you to be is going to be defined by me, laid out by me, identified by me. And I'm going to give you a template that you have to fit inside of in order to make me happy. That feels like winning, but it's losing. Or I don't know. It's so cockeyed. It's so cockeyed.
Al, here's the other thing. Sometimes we come from a place of fear and we're desperate to hold on to the person. We're desperate to hold on to the lifestyle. So we make an agreement. You know what? I will change. I'll dye my hair. I'll lose weight. I'll stay at home. I won't have any friends. We could go on. And in the meantime, we're miserable. And so what happens is we feel like, we're in a winning situation because we've kept the person, we've kept the relationship. But what starts building inside is all this anger and this animosity. And eventually it comes out in one way or another. And it's the same thing when you're talking about negotiations. Okay, it's not a political show. I don't know anything about politics. But if you're thinking about negotiating one country with another, and it may have an impact on the entire world, everybody has to make concessions, because if you come across as authoritarian, then the other person might feel humiliated and embarrassed in front of their group of people, their supporters. So it has to be a give and take. So I want to segue back for a moment, because success looks like so many things, and yet it's so precarious. And I'll give an example. I don't know what is with my voice, but if you think about success, you want to make a certain amount of money, and you make the money, and now you have a lot more problems at a whole other level. Plus, you have to hold on to the money. What are you going to do with the money? Everybody wants your money. Time and time again, I've seen interviews by people who are super, super wealthy, and they've either lost their mind, they've lost their money, they've lost their friends. They thought they had friends, they were all fake. So what are your thoughts about success really being elusive depending on how you measure it?
On that, which is such a great question. My mother answered that for me when I was little. But when I was a kid, I remember my mother telling me, money never made nobody a somebody, ever in the history of the world. Money never ever made a nobody into a somebody. However you got it, whether you earned it, whether it was inherited by you, whether you hit the lottery, however you got the money, the presence of the money in your bank account doesn't make you somebody. You're made somebody by the actions you take and the choices you make every single day. That's what makes you a person. So that whole idea that victory can be scored the way baseball is scored, where you've got a scoreboard with a number on it, and that number tells you whether you're a winner or not, is just wrongheaded. It's crazy. But then again, numbers are easy for people to remember. So somebody comes along and all of a sudden becomes a trillionaire, which is the first time that's ever happened in modern history. Now, there have been, in years past, there were the robber barons, and they were, accounting for inflation and the size of the economy at the time, they were trillionaires. They were trillionaires. There were people that controlled huge segments of the economy because they knew where the oil was, or because they invented the steam engine, or there are so many historical references that are similar to what we're experiencing today. But people tend to focus more on the number and on the house and on the servants and on the lifestyle and on the yachts. We talk about people who, the reality of this is, at any given point in anybody's life, no matter how much money they have, they're living inside of about 10 square feet from moment to moment. And what goes on inside those 10 square feet is determined by the person who occupies those 10 square feet, what they do, what they say, the choices they make, and the mere presence of opulence outside of that little 10-foot square, outside of that little space, the mere presence of opulence doesn't define you as anybody with any kind of authority. And so winning really has to be defined in terms, in my mind anyway, in terms of, let's say, long-term contributions to society as a whole, or to your family, or you mentioned family, and it's a subject for me because, especially when you're raising teenagers, there's an awful lot of conflict just sort of entrenched in that. It is very easy to see teenagers when you're a parent as the enemy. Really easy. In fact, they kind of enjoy that. Teenagers are working really hard at establishing their own lives. That means they have to reject, to a large extent, the life that their parents have given them, which means it's natural for teenagers to be rebellious, and it's natural for parents to feel assaulted when their teenagers behave in a rebellious way. And every time that's ever led to conflict, where I felt that because I was dad and they were who they were, just asserting my role as dad was good enough. Whenever I thought that, I always did it wrong. Always did it wrong. My best experiences raising kids have been when I was one of the kids. And we just talked about what needs to be done now and what has to be done today and what can we do together. And I have to listen. You're a listening mentor, so I want to hear your reaction to this. Listening presupposes learning. which means when I'm actually actively listening to you, even though I might have a pretty clear idea in my head how I feel about something, I need to be listening to what you say, because there's the possibility that I can do with a little adjusting. So I need to listen to you. And if I'm really, really listening to you, even if I'm the dad and you're the kid, even if in terms of rank, I have a higher rank than you do, I really do need to listen to you, because the truth is you may know better than I do how to do something. And often that was true. I mean, honestly, that was true. And I wish growing up as a parent, I had respected that process a little better than I did. I would have come through it with fewer scars, I guess. I mean, overall, it turned out really well, and I'm happy with how things turned out. And that's another thing. Sometimes it takes a long time. It's like farming. It's not hunting. You don't get immediate results. You get long-term results. But you got to trust the process. And sometimes trusting the process means letting things play out, even though they're not the way you would do it, and allowing for the possibility at the end of it that the loser may actually, in fact, be perceived as the winner, because their perception as being the winner is what's going to motivate them to actually comply with the terms that they were presented with. And that's where you get real positive change over the long haul.
Al, thanks for sharing that. One of the things that really stood out for me is what I heard you talk about when you're listening. We can be completely present and listening to someone, but we have a judgment already in our mind. And I would hear when I was growing up, when I was your age, I used to, if I were you, I would. That's a good school, but I would have all of those things. And those are all meant with love, but they were all very judgmental statements. So sometimes we really believe we know what's best for someone, but we actually don't. How could we possibly know what is best for someone else unless we have walked in the exact same path? And then we're looking at our own experience. That doesn't mean that the same thing's going to happen to someone else. Yet we always feel that we need to give our version of whatever it is. And so I think even as a coach, an executive coach, what I might say to my clients is, have you ever thought what would have happened if you did this? Or what could have happened if you had selected this path instead of, well, my experience with this, because no one cares. That's the bottom line. So when you're talking to your children in this hypothetical example, your children want to be acknowledged. They want to be heard. They want to know that you're actually listening to them instead of telling them which way it should be done. And I think that goes with the art of negotiation. It really is about putting yourself in the other person's place, understanding what do they want to take away from this exchange. And it's knowing your audience. So what can I concede without making it like it's not a concession that I can give to you that in return you will accept and say, well, let me give you something. And I want to just stop here with an example because we've had one of your guests on about this. It's like networking. Instead of walking around handing out cards, how may I be of service? Who may I introduce you to? What are your thoughts on that, Al?
It's what you I think you kind of nailed it there. I mean, the problem we have is that sometimes the actions we take feel really, really good. And because they feel good, we tend to repeat those actions. They kind of self-reinforce. But if we really inspect the actions from the outside and look at the actions we're taking, when we attack an employee in front of the other employees because we feel as though what we would have done would have been better than what they did, and we want to drive the point home by humiliating them in front of their coworkers, because that feels good. I mean, it actually does feel good to berate somebody, especially in front of an audience. When you know there are people watching, you kind of want to communicate to everybody how tough you are. And so being tough with somebody in front of other people feels good. And because it feels good, you tend to repeat the process over and over again. And then gradually over time, your best people quit. Your worst people shut down. I mean, the people that maybe you would prefer quit don't leave, but they quietly quit. They stay. They quit and stay, which is worse, and than quitting and leaving. And before long, you start wondering why your organization isn't growing and why it's not developing the way you would like it to. And it's because of you and the way you make people feel, because you feel as though you need to assert authority. And often the way you do that is by expressing anger, because anger. Now, there are going to be some people that are listening in on the conversation, and God bless them all, who remember serving in the military and knowing what it's like to come through basic training, and knowing, or they function in a police department, or some aspect of law enforcement. And a lot of that is drill. You've got to know and you've got to practice what you're going to do if this happens. And there are best practice responses to critical emergent situations in law enforcement and in the military that require that you don't think your way through it. You have to react quickly, which means that, and practicing means having somebody yell at you, often in front of everybody else, when you're doing it wrong, just to try to drill into your head that when this happens, this is how you have to deal with it. I mean, those are cases where winning is more like a sporting event, or where ultimately what you do and the action you take determines how successful you're going to be based on a reaction to something. We're not talking about that. And by the way, basic training isn't your whole career. Anybody who's actually served in the military will tell you that military service, especially with superior officers, is almost always a negotiation. And the really, really smart superior officers know how to deal with subordinate positions in the military in a way that gets the most out of their subordinates, not necessarily by ordering them to do things. If they have to, then they have to, but orders are few and far between, because circumstances generally don't call for orders. They call for collaboration and thinking. And I remember I read a book by John Statham on D-Day, and D-Day is a recent celebration for us. We're in June here, and every year we get together and we talk about D-Day, and D-Day is a matter of heroics. There's no doubt about that. But the whole point of the book on D-Day was that the reason why we won D-Day had more to do with the fact that everybody knew what to do when they landed. I mean, the reality of D-Day is it was very carefully planned out and very thought through beforehand. But when everybody landed on the beach, they landed on a different beach. It really depended on where the landing craft brought them, or they landed short of the beach, and they expected to have to scale a cliff, but in fact they were faced with an open beach, or they expected an open beach, but in fact had this cliff they needed to scale. And which means that when they landed, the plan kind of fell apart, that pretty much everybody needed to have the tools and the training and the drilling. And yet, and a lot of the comments from the soldiers and sailors who survived this were on the subject of wondering why they were trained in what they were trained in, thinking they would never need that. Why are you wasting my time teaching me how to use a grappling hook and climb a cliff? I'm going to land on an open beach. But when they actually landed, there was a cliff and they needed to climb it. And it was a damn good thing they had a grappling hook and knew how to use it. And because they were told, do what you have to do. We need a foothold here. Don't do what I tell you. Do what needs to be done. Now, if you allow everybody to win on D-Day, then you will win D-Day. But if D-Day is about some general making sure that everybody follows their orders, whatever they might be, then that's how you're going to lose. And in fact, because the Germans were waiting for instructions from Berlin on how to deal with this, there were huge delays on their side of the battle for people that were so afraid to act on their own, to act independently, because they were afraid of losing so much. They were so in fear of losing that was actually one of the factors in their loss on that. And so, I think the point that I'm trying to make is that your first instinct reaction is to try to win in a negotiation, to try to accomplish a victory. But if you think it through, the victory 9 times out of 10 isn't worth it. The experience, the thrill of victory, will ultimately lead to the agony of defeat, whether you like it or not. It might be a month or 2 months down the road, but you will eventually experience defeat simply because you settled for an easy victory or the feeling of victory to begin with. You got to calm down and listen to people, which is kind of your point, isn't it?
It is, but to some people, it's actually pointless because people really feel like and I've shared this before, they feel like they're already good listeners. So when I go into a keynote and I ask people to raise their hands, if you think you are a good listener, rate yourself 8 or higher on a scale of 1 to 10. Almost every hand in the room goes up. There might be 1 or 2 people that I think they fell asleep actually, but the rest of the people really believe they are excellent listeners. And I think when we're talking about winning, if we look at how we set ourselves up for success, and I'll give a basic example, writing a book. Writing a book is a journey, unless you're using AI, and then it's actually not a journey, it's something else, and that's another program. But you write a book, and then you publish the book, and then the book comes in the mail. You get your author's copy, and you hold that book in your hands. And that, for me, is one of the most incredible experiences. You've seen it come to life, the entire journey. And then you look for the sales. And the sales are not what you probably thought they were going to be. You expected somewhere in the small back of your mind, you're going to be a New York Times best-selling author. You're going to be brought out on the TV circuit, and people are just going to be like, how did you do it? You're going to be the next Mel Robbins, for example, with her Let Them book. And it doesn't happen. And so now you have this idea of what success is supposed to be, but now you feel like a failure because you forgot about the journey and you basically set yourself up to fail because the expectation went from, okay, I've got this book in my hands, I created it, I put it out in the world, to I'm not in the New York Times best-selling list and I'm not on the TV circuit. And that can be, you can acclimate that depending on what the situation is. But then you're in a situation, you start looking at other people who've written books. Well, how many reviews do they have? I wonder how many book sales they have. I'm going to talk to them because maybe they're doing something. And now all of a sudden it's competition. And that moment of joy, I've got one of my books right here. The moment of joy when you've got the book in your hand now becomes, you hate this book because it didn't bring you the revenue or the prestige. And I'm not talking about this book, but I'm just saying in general, in life, this is how we deal with things.
Well, that's a good book, first of all, the book that you held up. Hold it up again, because we should just say that. This is Stop Giving Away Your Value. And let's sort of say that the subtitle could be, and by the way, Dr. Jacalyn's value isn't that she wrote that book, or that she hosts a television show, or that she built a 100,000 plus audience for a collection, a portfolio of video programs that she offers. I mean, you're more than all of those things that you have done. And while any one of those things at any given moment may disappoint you in the moment, overall, the activity of building all those things up and pushing all those things forward day after day after day, and that persistence of looking for the success you want for each of those offerings, whatever they might be, is what drives you past the momentary feeling that you're losing along the way. Because everybody gets that feeling. Everybody gets that feeling of regret too. I mean, even after they've asserted themselves over somebody else, they'll get that moment of regret afterward where they wonder, maybe they could have done that a little differently. Maybe I could have handled that a little better. You know, that moment of regret, what you want to do is get to that moment of regret before you commit the mistake. So what you want to do is learn that if you make the mistake, whatever that mistake is, which is to assert yourself based on some criteria that you think defines you as something amazing. You know, when the fact that you wrote a book is less, and that you wrote it from your heart, and that you included content that you thought was important, when that moment becomes less important than the day that you're sitting across the desk from Jimmy Kimmel talking about it, and him asking you, how did you write this wonderful book? And everybody wants a copy of it. And I've got 10. I have 10 copies in the green room. Everybody loves it. You know, when you think to that moment of pure joy, whatever that might be, where everybody's talking about how wonderful this thing is that you did, it actually kind of ruins the moment of getting to that point where you write a book. I mean, there are an awful lot of tremendous accomplishments in human history that were posthumously awarded. People didn't even live to see some of their successes. But those are people that were in it for the long haul. They kept painting, they kept writing, they kept inventing over and over and over and over again. And their histories are littered with things that nobody wanted, but also included a few things that over time people learned they actually needed, and they went after it. And, I think that we're so, and maybe this is modern times, we're so captured by anything that feels good in the moment that we lose sight of the process of the positive feelings you get over a long period of time by just sticking with it. And it doesn't always feel like you're winning. Sometimes it doesn't. And we kind of chase that feeling, but the feeling is actually toxic in a lot of ways. So it's not a feeling you necessarily want. It tastes sweet, but it's not nourishing, I guess, is maybe one way to put it.
I think it's also about enjoying the journey, because you get to the end and then you're kind of like, wow, I spent all this time, all this money. I gave up this. I got in arguments with this person. I lost this friend. I lost this business partner because we didn't see eye to eye. And was it really worth it? Well, the journey is worth it if you actually go through each of the steps and acknowledge it. And another show basically would be enjoying the small steps and celebrating them, because getting to the final end doesn't mean that everything in your life is going to be the way that you thought in your mind that it was going to be. Like when we're children and we have these fairy tales and everything works out at the end. And as much as we'd like to believe that, as part of the experience of the journey, we have grown and we have changed. And what used to bring us joy may not be the same thing. So we may be in a completely different place with all new attributes that we now have to address and say, oh, well, I'm not that person anymore. So even though when I started this journey, I thought that this would bring me joy, this was actually just a stepping stone to the next journey.
So when you wrote the book, Stop Giving Away Your Value, you had in mind a message that often a lot of people think that the whole point of Hickory Farms, you remember Hickory Farms in the mall, the cheese?
Of course.
Right.
I think they're still around, aren't they?
I might be around somewhere, I don't know. But what I remember most about Hickory Farms is that you get free cheese just by walking by the store. There'd be somebody out front saying, would you like to try some cheese today? So there'd be free cheese outside. And you kind of knew if I went to the mall, I can get half a free lunch, I guess, and cheese samples. And sometimes you actually went in and bought some cheese, but often you just settled for the cheese they were giving away out front, if you know what I mean. When you make the point, stop giving away your value, you wrote a book that was centered on the fact that a lot of people just sort of offer what they have to offer without really thinking in terms of some kind of compensation, however they might want to define that. You're kind of investing in faith that somehow karma is going to pay off, and karma is going to, and listen, I like that philosophy, and I really do believe that over the long haul, living a good life is a good thing, and that basically good things come from that, and so you give away an awful lot of yourself all the time. You just do, because that's a human thing to do. You don't bill for every little transaction. You don't split the check every time you go out. Sometimes you're a little on the generous side maybe, and you just feel like it'll work out over the long haul. You want that. But at the same time, you can't live a successful professional life while taking your expertise and just throwing it out the door like free cheese in front of a Hickory Farms. You've got to understand that whatever that hour is that you spend with somebody that they're using to help them become more successful, that hour is worth something to them. And that worth something to them means that it should be worth something in return to you, because that hour isn't something you made up out of thin air. That hour is the sum total of all the things that you've done over your life and all the lessons you've learned offered to somebody in 1 hour. And that 1 hour has value. So I think, and now getting back to the book, because I think the book is a wonderful book and it's certainly a great idea. What's going to make that book sell is that someday, hopefully, well, we're all still alive very soon, someday somebody is going to pick up that book and they're going to read that book and they're going to say to themselves, this is exactly the lesson I need at exactly this time in my life. And they're going to have a lot of friends, whoever they are. That'll be the weird confluence of an influential person discovering a great idea, one of your ideas. And then they're going to go out and tell all their friends about it. And before you know it, you are going to be a New York Times bestseller. With the same book you wrote years ago that you've been wondering why you've had such a difficult time putting that over. if you know what I mean. Somebody's going to pick it up someday and say, you know what, people need to know about this. And that's what's going to make it work. And I just know that's true. You have to have a certain, and that, to me anyway, winning is the fact that you stuck with it. You put it out there. You made it available to people. You suffered the fact that it didn't instantly sell 1 million copies. You endured that feeling that somehow you wasted your time writing it, because the moment the ink dried, there weren't 1,000 people outside saying, give me a copy. It just, sometimes these things take time, and it really is farming. And then there's that question that you'll get years later that say, what does it feel like being an overnight success? Well, it was a long night. They weren't there. They weren't there.
A lot of nightmares along the way.
Yeah, this was a long, what do you mean overnight success? This was a long night. So, you just have to stick with it. And you can't be so hooked on the feeling that you've won that you lose the perspective it takes to survive all the little non-winning moments. I don't want to call them losing moments, because they're not. They're waiting. It's not losing, it's waiting. You've got to be able to survive all those moments that don't feel like that in order to get to the one that really ultimately does pay off. And you got to stick with it. You can't just change your mind. You can't assume that because somebody didn't buy what you wrote, that means what you wrote doesn't have value. It does have value. It has tremendous value. You just need to wait until people catch up with you. Sometimes that takes a while. It's the way, and you help them along the way with conversations like this. Which means everybody who's watching and is stuck with us through this whole program, I know we're just about done, hold the book up again. They need to get this book.
Well, Al, thank you for that. What I want to share is that I was invited to speak at a keynote, and I was asked if I had a book on a certain topic, and I said, not yet, but I'll write it. And so the book was written as part of my keynote speech, which I've now done twice. And so I'm hopeful that someone out there from the keynote read it, and actually someone did and put a very long, beautiful review. It's not able to be on Amazon because I had actually signed and given the book to the person, which Amazon doesn't acknowledge. But that person said that their life was changed from reading it. So for me, that was really part of why I do what it is I do. And I think it goes to setting expectations. And the one thing I want to close with is one thing that we all share wherever we are in the world, as long as we're breathing, is time. And when you give your time freely, hour after hour after hour, first of all, you're going to be exhausted because you're not doing self-care. And second of all, you may be taken advantage of. Maybe people come to you because they want your advice and you're not charging because you're a humanitarian and you want to do the best for everyone. But at the same time, when something is free, it's not always valued. But yet if there's a price tag on it, then it makes a difference. And I've seen this just with Facebook Marketplace. I've sold a number of my things. I love selling things. I love to see someone else wearing my clothes or get it. But if I put something at a very high price, people are extremely interested in it. And if I put something at a low price, no one's interested in it. So there's this mental process that if something's more expensive, we think it has more value. So speaking of value, tell us a little bit about what you're doing at ProFit for Teams.
Well, everything about ProFit for Teams, in fact, is exactly what we've been talking about today. How do we get everybody on a team of, let's say, 20 or 30 professionals to feel like they're winning, not like they're part of somebody else's win, but that the win that they're experiencing is actually something they contributed to and that they feel as though they can be celebrated for. ProFit for Teams is about collectively taking the shared personality of a group of people who are working together on something and articulating that in the sense that we can create a role model from it. That role model then standing as the role model for everybody on the team that answers the question, who are we when we're doing our best work on our best day? So that whole core question, who are we? Who are we when we're working together? What we found in our research is the closer everybody's answers are together on that, the more clearly everybody sees that role model and can articulate that role model, the more their behavior is patterned after the way that role model would behave, and the more success. Global success, meaning not just the 3 or 4 main contributors of the team, but everybody on the team shares in the experience of winning. The goal ultimately being when this team wins, it's because everybody contributed, not just because a few people contributed and everybody else went along for the ride. Amazing things happen when you take 100% of your team and you engage it in the work that you're trying to do. And everything about ProFit for Teams is organized around that. So thank you for that opportunity to talk about what we do.
Thank you, Al. What's the best way for people to reach you?
I can be reached at 212-480-3730. Or you can email me at al@pro-fit4teams.com. That's the number 4. So for people who are listening and can't see, it's al@pro-fit, the number 4, teams.com.
All right. Well, thank you, my friend and colleague. I appreciate you being here on another episode of Ahead for Business, and we'll be back next week. Bye, Al.
Looking forward to it, Doc. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching wherever you are in the world and whatever platform you're watching on or listening. We'd really appreciate if you would join our team here at USA Global TV and Radio and Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. We've already earned the YouTube Silver Creator Award for over 100,000 subscribers on USA Global TV and Radio, and we're working towards that at Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. We started that channel about 2 years later, so please help us reach the 100,000 level. It's very prestigious and it means a lot to our team. Thank you again for watching. If you're interested in hosting your own TV show, we are always looking for people who would like to host their own TV show. We do provide training. Here's some more information to help you decide if this is the right path for you. Thanks again for being here. People are searching for experts every day. Are they finding you, or are they finding someone else? Every day, professionals are building authority through media. We've already built the platform, USA Global TV and Radio. Over 14,000 shows streamed to over 60 countries. This isn't about becoming famous. It's about leverage, visibility, credibility, opportunity. One interview, one conversation, one show, repurposed into content, connection, and business growth. Most people assume hosting a TV show requires a studio, a production team, and a massive budget. Our television packages begin at $1,500 US per month. Professional production, global distribution, replay visibility, built for voices with something to say. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and if this resonates with you, we should talk. USA Global TV and Radio, all rights reserved. Contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com.
How much of your value have you been giving away? Saying yes when the answer should have been no? Lowering your price to secure the opportunity? Giving more while receiving less? Over time, it adds up. Until one moment brings clarity, you've been giving away your value. This is not about working harder. This is not about doing more. It's about boundaries. It's about pricing. It's about respect. From Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck comes a direct and necessary message. Stop over-delivering. Stop underpricing your expertise. Stop negotiating against yourself. Because when you recognize your value, everything changes. Stop giving away your value. Boundaries, pricing, and the business of respect. Available now wherever fine books are sold and on Amazon. A film by USA Global TV and Radio. Executive producer Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Videographer and cinematic production Paul Garcia. Voiceover by Ed Wargas. Stop giving it away. Start owning it.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.